Thank you all for attending, and thank you for Telstra to help sponsor this event, and of course to Microsoft to always bring incredible insights, and we very much appreciate their support. Today's session is on how to strengthen your security using the latest AI-powered solutions from Microsoft. So my name is Benno. I'm here, your host today. I've over 20 years experience helping organizations transform securely and strategically through the Microsoft ecosystem. I specialize in aligning business outcomes with technology investments, leveraging the entire Microsoft stack to help you reduce your operational risks and drive scalable growth. Philip Meyer, you heard in the background before, also known as Philmy, is a technology strategist and a former Microsoft leader with over 4 decades in IT. He helps organizations leverage the Microsoft technologies to accelerate transformation, and his expertise in productivity solutions, cloud migrations, AI security. There's probably 30 other things I haven't mentioned there. I'm sorry.
One word, Microsoft.
In this session, Phil will be offering his insights and practical guidance on how you can unlock future growth, but also reduce your risk. And we have our very own Brendan Fazel. Brendan, you want to turn yourself off on camera and wave at the folks? He's our senior cybersecurity and IT operations leader with over 17 years experience across IT professional services and managed services. He's our director of information, security and delivery, where he helps organizations reduce cyber risk, strengthen resilience, and deliver secure outcomes. Brendan specializes in cybersecurity strategy, Microsoft security architecture, risk reduction, and service delivery excellence. And we have John Hodgson. John is Telstra Azure Partner Domain Specialist. John is experienced and an adaptable Microsoft sales specialist with a strong background in pre-sales, solution architecture, and implementation of IT across a diverse range of industries. John has developed deep expertise in solving business problems using the Microsoft ecosystem, particularly across modern work and Azure. And he will be the next to talk. In a few minutes, I'll let you have the speaker, I should say. Actually, let's do it now. John, if you're going to turn yourself off mute.
Sure thing. Good to see you everyone. John Hodgson here from Telstra. Always happy to support Exigo Tech and Microsoft. So really happy to be opening this session. But let's start with the acknowledgement of country. At Telstra, we recognise and acknowledge the existing original and ancient connection Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have to the lands and waterways across the Australian continent. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. Thanks very much. So look, I want to start the session by just highlighting, how you acquire and license and who you trust for your licensing is a really important question for, when we start to think about the foundations of your security posture. Now, of course, at Telstra, you can buy your Microsoft licensing both for Microsoft 365 and Azure from Telstra, and that includes service subscriptions as well. So, but at the core, you can get those products from Telstra and put it on the Telstra bill. And if that helps your organisation in some way, that's great. But we'd like to see that go beyond just the acquisition of the licenses. So first and foremost, we want to optimize how you buy, but also what you're buying. And that is part of the relationship we have with our partners like Exigo Tech to help you ensure that you're buying the right software, solving the right business problems, and only purchasing what you need and buying them at an optimized price as well. Of course, at Telstra, we support the management of those products through our Telstra Apps Marketplace. So there's a self-help portal there. Your partner like Exigo Tech can also support the management of these products in addition to other server products. So what are some of the benefits, I guess, of buying it through Telstra? I mean, first and foremost, you don't pay anything more than what you would do if you bought it directly from Microsoft. And in fact, you'd probably be in a better commercial position if you were buying it through Telstra. And of course, you get other benefits like support services from Microsoft, aka Unify or Premier support level of support through Telstra. So you get pretty much the same support that Telstra gets from Microsoft when you have a Microsoft issue to raise with us. So that can be quite an extensive cost for most organizations. So it's a high value add-on. And lastly, of course, by bringing your licensing and your spend to Telstra, we can create that commercial model that is much more competitive than what you have today, I would expect. And that includes the support for Exigo Tech to undertake services on your environment. And that might be the migration into to Telstra for your services, or it could be the optimization or other projects that you want to execute with those funds. So come and talk to myself and Ben, and we can explore what your needs are and how that might look on the Telstra platform. All right, thanks, mate.
All right, so today is the agenda. And I'll kick it off and tell you a little bit about Exigo Tech and introduce a rather nasty guest very shortly. And then I'll hand it over to Phil, who will dive deep into the Microsoft security stack, including how Gen AI impacts security, that is Gen AI impacts security, and how to use Microsoft 365 to strengthen security and see security in action. And also, I'll then allow Phil to hand it over to Brendan, who will give us a bit of an overview of what he learned recently at Gartner. Just fresh off coming from Gartner as well, so I can't wait to hear from him. And then again, as I mentioned before, at the end, we do have that survey, which we kindly ask you to complete so that we can continue to offer this incredible session to other people. So a little bit about Exigo Tech. We're about 160 professionals established in 2015 across Australia, New Zealand, and across APAC. We are 100% focused on Microsoft, and we are a Telstra Platinum partner. We received many awards, including well, I was going to say probably the best one for us most recently was the Telstra Award for NAS in 2025. But we do have a ton of awards, but it's not about us. It's about what we can do to help you in your business. Just be confident in knowing that we are an ISO 27001. So we have spent the time to understand the security stack, making sure that we're aligned to those practices as well. And I think Brendan will talk a bit more about that as well as we progress. So let me get going with what are the biggest threats in your business? Well, there are a lot. Now, to introduce you to a couple as an example, and I'm not sure if you've heard about this ransomware group, but it is the most vicious group in the world at the moment. Scattered Lapsus Hunters, or is an alliance of three prominent groups, Scattered Spider, Lapsus, and Shiny Hunters. This group is said to be behind more than 40 major corporate breaches, and it is a combined criminal alliance formed in mid-2025. This group has attacked organizations like Qantas, Toyota, Disney, actually IKEA, I noticed as well, with tactics like social engineering, smishing and phishing and SIM swapping and ransomware. These are just some examples. This group of mostly young teenagers test and boast about their prowess using the latest tricks and tactics to infiltrate your business, and all for bragging rights. There was a British company called K&P Logistics. I'm not sure if you remember hearing them in the middle of last year, but they were shut down permanently from this ransomware attack, leaving over 700 people without a job. The business actually shut down, started in 1865. And then what about here in Australia? Qantas lost control of 153 gigabytes of data, and the ACCC is still mulling over the $1 million fine that they will need to pass down soon. There are legal requirements inside Australia that are important to understand, and I'll talk about them a bit more shortly. But responsible disclosure is very important. And the NDB scheme, and it's part of the 3C of the Privacy Act, it requires companies to notify individuals and the commission of any data breaches. So it's really important that you as a business owner and a leader in your business understand some of these things. I'm not going to go into any details about it. I just want to give you a bit of an understanding so you can make some investigations on yourself. But that is where we're at. Now, these links are clickable. So if you'd like to look at the Notable Breaches Act, for an example, or if you'd like to look at the Qantas attack, please do so. Now, unfortunately, that ransomware group has a brand new operative, meet Shiny Spider, and it's fully autonomous ransomware as a service operator. This ransomware AI agent has claimed more than 1,500 victims at the end of 2025 and has made over $300 million. And that's US dollars, they're proper dollars, and works day and night with no rest. AI is no doubt a wonderful thing, but in the hands of bad actors, it's extremely dangerous. This is why you're here, to learn what you can do to protect your business and its employees. And with that, I love this quote. In today's digital landscape, it's not just a matter of if your organization will be faced with a cyber threat, but when. Cyber resilience, not just prevention, is now essential for business survival. Now, shortly I will introduce you to Phil. I keep promising that, but I've got a little bit more to talk to. Now, in this section, I want to talk about how AI is actively playing a part in security, the new challenges with cybersecurity in relation to mainstream use of AI, and some data breaches across APAC, what organizations need to be doing now to combat this challenge. And with AI firmly in the age of AI, we're in it, AI is embedded in every workload, and that changes the security equation. AI is a great security shield and a sword, but it's also its Achilles heel. It helps defenders move faster, but it also allows attackers to scale and automate like never before. So the question is, in the worst case scenario, what would you do? How would you contain it quickly? And do you know your legal obligations? This is why preparedness matters more than ever. Next, I'll show you how AI can be defensive and offensive, and how Microsoft builds security into AI so it becomes an advantage and not a risk. The same way Microsoft enables your systems like M365 and the rest of the Microsoft suites, Microsoft also offers solutions to defend against. Attackers can weaponize AI to allow them to also be more efficient. For example, on the left here, there are some ways that attacks can be weaponized with the use of agentic AI in audio creation and deepfakes. We've heard of them before. And AI to morph existing malware into instantly create new zero-day threats happens all the time. When AI is used to find gaps in organizational security posture, you need to be aware. The speed at which they can now attack is just incredible, and AI has introduced an entire new cyber challenge and security methods that you need to be aware of. To help defend against this, Microsoft are using AI in their security tools to detect anomalies and environments and behavioral changes, and Phil's going to talk a lot more about that later. And they have enhanced monitoring and automated analysis and even event data to be able to detect zero-day threats quicker. But one common example here is where companies capture logs from their applications, authentications, and security devices, which could lead to thousands of attacks in a day. In this piece is what I want to introduce now. It's the changes you should be aware about. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and I've prefaced that now, and Exigo Tech don't offer legal services, but here are some useful things that I've found that I want to present to you. And 2025 saw a lot of changes to the Privacy Act in Australia, with major implications for businesses and IT managers. The Australian government have expanded the definitions of reasonable steps that now need to be taken into effect. That includes mandatory staffing training and privacy on data protection, creating internal procedures for handling and securing data, implementing technical safeguards to protect your environments, incident response plans and policies, putting measures to secure personal information. That's just some of the things that we saw in 2025. Because of these changes, there are new legal and insurance-related implications that you need to be aware of. The maximum civil penalties have now increased 10% year on year. Penalty units, which is the measurement used to calculate the fines for an infringement, is now 331 Australian dollars per offence. Now, that cyber breach that we had from Qantas, multiply that by 331. That's a very large number. That's going to shut them down. So the ACCC is going to need to come up with some way to penalise them, but not take them out of the equation completely. Now, as I mentioned before, individuals can now be fined $2.5 million if you accidentally do something, but businesses up to a maximum of $827 million. I couldn't believe it when I saw that number. Insurance companies are now introducing minimum compliance requirements to take up policies with them, essentially demonstrating Essential 8, which is one of the frameworks we'll talk about, maturity level 1, which is pretty much the lowest thing you could do. So that's becoming a requirement. But not doing so, they could refuse your insurance, and you'll see your premium skyrocket. Now, what are we seeing in 2026? That was bad news for 2025. Know your privacy obligations. The guidance provides directions to businesses about what personal information they may collect, how they must protect it, and when it must be deleted, supporting stronger integrity and transparency across the AML and CTF, anti-money laundering and CTF. Can't remember CTF, counter-terrorism. Can't remember what the F is. Something they fight. Yeah, fraud. Thank you. And that's these frameworks that the government have introduced. So this is what's come through for 2026. And the latest updated guidance is designed to support the expanded range of businesses that will soon fall under the Privacy Act of 1988. We've had this Privacy Act in Australia for a very long time, but these tranches of new requirements are coming into businesses as these AML CTF reforms come into place. And now, for example, 1st of July 2026, real estate professionals, precious metal dealers, stones as well, professional services such as lawyers, conveyancers, accountants, they'll be all brought into this act. It's called Tranche 2. So any business out there that has not looked at this will need to pay attention to this or will be paying big fines. So it's an important piece. We are trying to navigate that as well for our customers. Brendan will talk a little bit about that later as well. Also important is changes for current reporting entities. That's in Tranche 1. So last year they introduced Tranche 1 effects, and that's where the volume of personal information that you're handled needs to be understood as well. It's not good enough that you're just holding data. You need to explain why you're holding it and what the purpose of it is. And also higher standards for consent and fair collection. I was mentioning that before. Many businesses rely on implied consent or broad policy statements that clearly reflects what's happening behind the scenes. For example, marketing automation or tracking pixels or third-party integrations. The direction is to tighten expectations around what consent looks like. So more like what's more active and more informed, how you clearly explain what you're collecting and why you're collecting it, and whether your practices are fair and reasonable. It doesn't mean you can't collect personal information. It just means you need to be able to justify and clearly communicate it. I think it's good. I think it's good to see these privacy things come into place, but that's a big problem for us because we have to manage it all. Also, more accountability for data security, not just having a policy. Privacy compliance is no longer just put a privacy policy on a website. Regulators and customers expect you to take practical steps to protect data and to prove it. There may also include expectations around access controls, who can see what data. Obviously, multi-factor is pretty ubiquitous nowadays. Staff training, vendor risk management, what your third-party provider does with that data is very important as well. And secure disposal of information you longer lead. There's a lot more on the screen. I want to get on as soon as I can and hand it over to Phil. If you do want to have these conversations with us, we are ready to have them. But for that, I'm just going to move on to the next slide, which is what leaders must do now. So executives need to understand their privacy reforms and start integrating privacy risks into their enterprise risk strategy. Under privacy and AI governance, align the privacy risk management with cyber and AI governance for a comprehensive oversight and accountability. Assessments and controls, the Commission's privacy impact assessments want us to review all AI use cases and strengthen the third-party controls. So we have to get into this at a holistic approach. And board reporting, ensure board receives meaningful privacy risk reports to support strategic trust. These are all the things you as leaders need to think about. We think about it a lot. Now, if you come in late, I do need your help. Please scan this QR code and pre-register to take the Microsoft Cloud Accelerator Security survey. That's at the end of this presentation. If you do that, please do that. You'll actually automatically qualify for a zero trust security assessment that we provide at Exigo Tech. And I think that's me. How did I go for time? 21, I'm 1 minute over. A quick slide on zero trust security assessment while Phil warms up his laptop and gets his mouse fingers ready and does all that he needs to do. With that, I'll put Phil on the screen. And Phil, you can take over control when you're ready.
Okay. Before I get started, I wanted to pick up on that third point that you raised about third parties. Yeah, that's 4 bullet points on the second prior slide.
Yep.
I really like that. And I wonder if the attendees have got an appreciation of how to achieve that third-party control.
Tough one.
It is a tough one. I was recently on a panel for the ICASA, which is all about third-party controls in software. And it really is one of those challenging items for you as directors, leaders in industry. The only thought that I have is that there's got to be a pass-through to those third parties from you in terms of you've got responsibilities, passing those responsibilities, not delegate completely, but in partnership address that control. You know, the Qantas one you spoke of was actually a third party. It was Qantas. Yeah. So that kind of concept that you do all you can with rigor to secure and govern and comply and to prevent data loss, but you empower an organisation to do work for you. And that's the element that puts you at risk. So please do think about how you deal with that. Hi, everybody. I'm Phil. As you kindly pointed out, Ben, been with Microsoft, or had been at Microsoft for 34 and a half years, 47 years in the IT industry, absolutely loving. Wasn't easy when you get retrenched from business, but in the last 6 months, thanks to people like Ben and the Exigo Tech team, I'm really enjoying it out there, helping them, helping you as customers of theirs. Today, I'm just going to take some time in and around that generative AI, Gen AI, and its impact on security, touch on some of the offers that Microsoft's got, obviously enabled, made capable by the Exigo Tech team with support from Telstra. So we'll get into that. And there's a really good lightweight guide. Now you see that word purview, you might be wondering what is this thing called purview of which you speak, Phil. That is a really key technology to look at. There's very few vendors who've got technology like this in the market to give you that data governance, compliance, sensitivity labeling, data loss prevention, which is such a critical element in this era of Gen AI. Like, if I may, it's kind of stealing from things I'm going to cover, but I want to make the point and probably make it again, is in the days prior to Gen AI, we lived in a world really which was security by obscurity. It was just too hard to find stuff in a business, stick it on a SharePoint site, and we struggle to find it on the SharePoint site. Nowadays, with Gen AI, without the guardrails that Purview has, any person could ask a question, give me the salaries of management. And I know you've heard that before, but I've actually seen it in real life. And it wasn't managers, it was teachers at a school where a student asked that question, can I have the salaries of the teaching staff? And they got it because that particular school right here in Sydney, not very far from where Ben and I are sitting, had that problem about 18 months ago. But let me move on because there's quite a bit to get through in the amount of time. Definitely there is an impact around Gen AI on the security message. And I will indicate that AI is a two-edged sword, particularly Gen AI is a two-edged sword. It can be used for good, but it is also being used for bad. And that's when you talked about those cybercrime, the spiders and the hunters and the scattereds. They're using Gen AI too. They're using AI technology to go on the attack. The good news is that the Microsofts of the world and lots of other people are using AI, law enforcement, etc., to do it. I did like to start with this slide, though, that just talks about responsible AI. And there's, kind of 6 bullet points there that I'll let you read. I'm not going to read them. I think there's some words behind that commentary that I will share with you. The principle of Microsoft being a very business-focused entity. By that I mean focused on providing products and services to businesses, not consumers. They realise that in the majority of the world out there today, when you see the media, they're largely talking about consumer products. And in the world of consumer where you're not paying for it, well, you are paying for it. You're paying for it with your data. And so the core principles of Microsoft is that your data is not being used to train the models to which you pass the data. So that's one of the key things that comes through those 6 bullet points. Your data is not training the model. There's a number of other points, and the other one, but the one I wanted to also make is they offer copyright protection. And maybe you're a legal firm, maybe you're creating content, maybe you're worried about Gen AI creating something similar in the public domain. Well, if you can verify that you have not trained your internal grounded, your tenant on that data, and it accidentally goes and creates something that looks like Shakespeare, then Microsoft will defend you because it has happened by accident. I love a little story from my past in the IT industry. Anybody heard of the 200 monkeys in a room? No, 200 monkeys in a room. For 200 monkeys in a room typing, they potentially could create Hamlet. And this is the same idea. In this world of Gen AI, and it's so easy to generate content, you could actually generate by accident a Harry Potter novel that looks just like a J.K. Rowling, but you've never trained it on any of that. So Microsoft will defend in that more extreme case, but in a more general case, you might be creating a product, you might be writing terms and conditions, and they might end up looking very similar to somebody else's, and that is coincidence, not by intent. Microsoft will protect you. So that's just 2 of about 4 key points. Look, the AI workplace, And I really like this slide that's been put together. I didn't build this one. I'd probably give to Benno, who's created this one, but I like it because it does talk to kind of 5 key principles that work in the workplace. Some of that's around employee efficiency. Some of it that is about business process and automating business process. And some of it's also about how you better engage your customers. And all those elements is where generative AI can play a role. Microsoft Content talks about this success framework of employee experience and better engagement with customers. So it resonates very much in business process and bending the curve. So there's a lot of parallels to what you put here together here, Ben. And in that, if you are wondering where your AI journey begins, maybe don't try and pick all 5. Pick one. Work with the Exigo Tech team to explore how generative AI might empower your employee experience. Get that working well. And please, I don't like the word proof of concept. This is adoption. If I can drew, because I'm a historian, love my history, this is like electricity. This is a profound moment in human history, generative AI. This is a moment where it's not, oh, I think we'll turn the steam engines on and we might try electricity out. No, we went, okay, we're going to be turning the steam engines off and electricity is going to slowly take over from driving our factory from steam and coal to using electricity. This is how businesses will be in the future. It is transformative. It's not a proof of concept. It's not a pilot. Get ready to adopt it. There will be some failings on the way, but like falling off your bike, you get back up, dust yourself off and keep going, because this is the future. The future is AI. But with that comes a whole new attack surface. So in the old days, we used to deal with our traditional threat vectors, as you know, Ben, down there on the bottom row, identity, MFA, great, endpoints, securing those devices, making sure our data is protected. Well, I don't know that everybody's really done as good a job of that. And Gen AI is exposing some of the weaknesses and the poor hygiene around data security that could have been addressed. But, that term I used earlier, security by obscurity, they've got away with it. But now we turn on the AI. Suddenly people are writing prompts and getting responses, and they're seeing all this data estate in the business. They're doing RAG. So this is where we're not just doing kind of document generation and spreadsheet analysis. It's now diving into core systems. So we're using technology, and I really advocate you looking at Copilot Studio, AI Foundry, Power Platform, all things that Ben and the team at Exigo Tech can talk to you about, to augment, to add to that query, that generative query in your business, to give you deep insights to your key systems. There's a really good example we could play where you want to understand a travel policy. Well, don't just go to the documents to talk about travel policy. It's Phil. He probably wants to know how much budget he's got left. So tie it into the SAP system or the Dynamics system, bring that data out and give Phil a little bit more information than just saying he's got till December 31st to register his expenses, his travel. He's got this much money left in his budget as well. This is very cool stuff when you think about applying it in business process and engaging your customers. But also with that comes this amplified risk. We certainly hear about prompt injections. This particularly happens in the consumer-based implementations. I'm not going to mention the brands. Basically, anything other than Copilot and anything other than the Microsoft platform is prone to things like prompt injections, because they don't have natively the guardrails and the protections to prevent somebody putting into that prompt something malicious that trains it to say something that's inappropriate, injecting kind of bad language and hateful speech and racism and gender bias can be injected into that environment without the appropriate guardrails. And this is, again, where Microsoft brings in that strength. Some models are more vulnerable than others as well. It's wonderful. Please don't think that Copilot is a large language model. Copilot is a front end to over 11,000 large language models, which is those brains, if you will. And there's specialist brains for healthcare, for financial services, for doing deep research. So in my time out, I've realized that in the general view, there's this correlation that people think Copilot is just OpenAI. It's not anymore. It's many, many other things. And if you follow the press, you'll know that Anthropic will also come to Copilot in the workplace.
And I presume Microsoft AI as well.
Yes.
Yep.
So this just simplifies some of this generative AI and how it's reshaping how we work in the security risk into those three buckets. Data oversharing. Well, as I said, security by obscurity. You didn't know you were oversharing before. It was in a SharePoint site that was too hard to find. It was in your OneDrive you didn't know you had no protections on. Now it's so easy. The Copilot can see all. Data leaks by disgruntled employees, that insider risk management element. What happens if you've got an angry employee and they poison that well of information? So insider risk management is something we need to consider, something that is a technology that detects. That doesn't line up with all the policies we've had in the past. We set off some alarms. That person, Ben, left 2 weeks, is just left. 2 weeks ago, he downloaded a whole lot of documents in the business. We need to go and do an investigation. And those data links by those negligent and accidental scenarios. Look, this really does talk about that fragmentation and what it leads to. So on the left-hand side, those classic scenarios that would exist in business today. I'd be very impressed if you've got all those elements addressed in your business today. And that's why I'd commend you to think about the zero security assessment you guys are offering from Exigo Tech.
Anyone. Yep.
And it will help you then address by leading to, we don't want you experiencing that complexity and higher cost. We don't want you having bad security outcomes. Look, yesterday I was reading Rundown AI, something I subscribe to. 3 more security breaches yesterday across an insurance company in Japan, a telecommunications company in Canada. Sorry, I forget what the other one, I think it was a healthcare company. I don't remember what country, but 3 yesterday, which were big, substantial breaches. We don't want that happening to you. I'm sure that you don't want that happening to you. So please do take on board that assessment opportunity that the Exigo Tech team are offering. Look, work with them to discover those risks, prevent data loss in your data estate, execute those quick investigations. And I'm going to talk very shortly about some of the technologies our friends at Microsoft make available to help you address those particular entities to make it very easy. Now, they do build a lot of those security guidance, not in isolation. I've got to give it to the Microsoft team. They do look to those industry security frameworks that are represented on this it's like a zoo, a tapestry of different options here. Look, there's some that I personally really like. I don't like them all. I'll try and avoid mentioning the ones I don't like. But the ones I like is the CIS benchmark. That one's right in the middle there. And I think it's very modern and it's kept very current with respect to cloud services and Gen AI. I like the SMB 1001, and I believe you guys are in that space too. That's fantastic to think about what the needs on a small business are, which can be different to an enterprise business. GDPR, obviously, if you're in North America, but it's interesting that Australia is looking towards the principles of GDPR to be brought into the Australian AI regulatory framework and the EU AI regulations as well. Australia is interesting. It's got this kind of balance between very strict controls in Europe versus very lax controls in North America. I think that the inquiry that was run October last year was very good. Shoebridge, Pocock, the senators. You can have a look at the recording of that if you're interested. And they had more balance in terms of we don't want to stifle innovation by over-regulation. And that came through to me, at least, as a theme. Look, Essential 8's there. You've got IRAP, and Microsoft, I know, is very involved in their cybersecurity, the ASC, SC, and the building out of that cyber shield. And you can see industry ones too, like HIPAA, which is more of a healthcare initiative. But what do we do to strengthen our security in the workplace setting? So this is very much now going to focus more on workplace security. Your OneDrives, your Teams, your SharePoints, your documents. But there's also the element to consider in this around your business data. I talked about Copilot Studio, Power Platform, touching core systems. So there's areas there that I'm sure we could explore with Exigo Tech's help to see how you can use that Purview family to protect it. But this is a message from Vasu, who is the lead for Microsoft Security. Let me play that.
Marker? The age of agentic AI is upon us, and with it, a new frontier of work that helps you get intelligence in depth, increase productivity, and elevate potential. For us to unlock the potential of AI, we must start with trust, and trust starts with security.
That's why security is our #1 priority at Microsoft. We put it above all else, building products that are secure by design, secure by default, and with secure operations all around.
We deliver an AI-first, end-to-end security platform to address all your needs, from AI apps to platforms to agents, from code to cloud, from external threats to insider risks.
Using generative AI to protect at AI speed and scale, we help defenders proactively protect what matters most.
We make products that work with your existing investments, not ask you to replace them.
Our services help mitigate risks, respond to breaches, and reduce the burden on your operations, so you can focus on what matters.
We work with the entire ecosystem to offer you comprehensive protection.
So today, tomorrow, and beyond, security can create opportunity for you. We know trust has to be earned every day, and we are so grateful for yours.
That's not a small number of people that were presented there, and they're only a fraction of the 15,000 odd people at Microsoft who are focused every day on security. Yeah, 15,000 people at Microsoft, and all they do every day is make technologies around security, or they're instrumental in supporting what is representative in this digital defence report. There's a number of groups. There's cybercrime units, there's their forensics units, their DART, which is their response team units. They've got teams that work every day looking at the dark web for, software products that you mentioned up for sale, taking them down. The other day, they took down an entity called Red VDS, which sells on the dark web virtual machines pre-armed and able to go on the attack. So you then just pointed at the organizations you want to attack. And so they took that infrastructure as a service provider in their virtual machine platform. So that was Red VDS. If you're interested in the report, it's very short. It's only about 110 pages. And you can get it through that link that is on the screen, aka.ms/NDDR. There is an executive summary, which is about 10 pages long. I think probably the telling points that come out of that is what I've snipped here. And look at those numbers. They're not small. 100 trillion signals processed every day. Now, that doesn't mean they've got thousands of people looking at those signals individually. They're obviously using AI to take all that information, correlate it, assemble it, do analysis, give them insights on what the attack vectors are. But 100 trillion signals a day that are coming across the Microsoft 365 platform, the Azure platform, the Dynamics platform, what people are even doing in Xbox. So that information is going to this bed of AI analyzed information, and they share it. They make it available to their competitors in the security space. Most security vendors today will use this security graph, as it's called, to help make their products stronger. Microsoft would love you to use Defender and Purview and Preview and Entra, but we appreciate that there's choice out there in the market, or Microsoft does, because the enemy here isn't those other security vendors. Who is it?
The enemy.
It's the enemy. It's the nation state actors, and it's the cybercrime organizations. And this is a united alliance against that community. So they're happy to share, there's a couple of vendors who don't play in this ecosystem. And if you aggregate them, they're lucky to have a tenth of the insights to what this alliance has in terms of signals. You can look at the number of malware detections every day, 4.5 million, 15,000 partners, 34,000 security engineers employed. Sorry, the 15,000 I used earlier was the partner ecosystem, 34,000 employees at Microsoft. That's a big number inside the business. It's funny, somebody said to me the other day, well, Microsoft seems to be a security company rather than a cloud company. And there's some truth to that. If you look at the amount of revenue they make out of the security technologies, and maybe that's a bit tough to say, it's now more than Windows out of those security products. The portfolio is extensive. Look, and to bring some perspective to the extensiveness, the comprehensiveness of the security portfolio, it's not just an XDR product. It's funny when you meet people sometimes, I'm okay, Phil, I don't need anything more. I've got my Trend Micro on my McAfee on my PC. I'm all good now, I'm safe. Well, that's just a tiny dimension about endpoint security. Nothing there about threat protection or offering a security platform or the data files that are on their machine or anything that can happen with a supply chain attack. All those elements in the outer part of the circle is what Microsoft gives. And it's the most comprehensive and rounded set of capabilities from identity. And it was great that Benno talked about identity and multi-factor authentication, addressing 99.9% of threats. And I'm sure everybody in the call has got multi-factor authentication. And if anything, it's probably even moving to passkeys now, which is the new drive. FIDO2, passkeys on your phone, which is another device, additional set of verification services. Device management, which is the Intune technologies, etc. Now, I do thank Ben for sharing this slide. I thought it was particularly good. There was a company I used to make reference to when I was a Microsoft employee called Blue Voyant. You can look them up. And they did a pretty good job. They listed out about 25 different vectors for security that a business needs, 25 of them down the left-hand side. Then they mapped the 24 or so that Microsoft did. There was one that Microsoft didn't do at that time, which was to do with pen testing. And then it showed you what you needed in terms of a tapestry, an array of different other security vendors on the right-hand side to address what Microsoft offers. It is an integrated, comprehensive, no seams between each product technologies. Now, Ben's kindly shared this slide, which I think is a simpler representation of that, more compressed in it. But you'd probably look at that. It's funny, I was talking to a customer the other day. Well, I'm okay, I've got Sophos. Well, Sophos is just one little splinter in there. Look to the left, look to the right, which makes up a security tab. Now, the point I'd like to make, and I hope it lands with you, is the cyber criminals don't attack in a pillar. A cybercrime organisation attacks horizontally. They start on the left and they use every point they can to get to your data. If you're working with a siloed approach in your security, you have gaps between each of the silos. Microsoft leaves no gaps because all those silos are connected and integrated to ensure that we don't have those gaps. This is a nice piece that's just also being produced by Coopington Cole, which is an analyst group, which really clearly indicates, the Palo guys do a great job. There's no doubt about it. It's a little pricey, the Palo technology. It's pretty comprehensive. It covers most of those pillars that I had, silos I had on the prior slide. But it's pretty clear that Microsoft, when it comes particularly to Gen AI defense, is a clear leader for your organization to consider because of its holistic way. So, look, I imagine most of you, thumbs up if you're a Business Premium user today or you've got any of the B suites. All right, so we've got some Business Premium users out there. Good. There's more thumbs coming up. So you appreciate that in Business Premium, it's a core of Business Premium is a level of security capabilities in the box. They're there already. So you've got, but if I may, it's a bit like what Ben talked about earlier in terms of maturity levels. It's kind of the maturity level one. It's your basic. It's a detect, if I like SIS I love, I mentioned that SIS framework earlier. It's kind of that first level, which is detect. I detect that we've got somebody trying to hit us with a phishing attack, trying to hit us with ransomware. I detect that I've got sensitive information and I manually classify it in the business. I've got devices and I want to detect that those employees are secure. So I've used the word detect a lot there. But what if I want to respond? This is where what I'm going to talk to in terms of these new add-ons from Microsoft really kick in. They bring in that next level. They update your maturity level to a high level to respond to those malware attacks, to go on the offensive about data loss protection, to protect your devices. Not one employee who's been hit with a malware or a ransomware or an email which has got something attached to it. It goes and then looks across the organization to find other devices attack. So it's way more comprehensive, get you up. It's pretty easy to get up and running. It's a kind of an add-on to your business premium subscription. It is cost effective. Again, it's monthly payment if you wish to do that, with an annual commit if you wish to do that. And we are talking here about the top-rated security vendor across IDC, Gartner, and Forrester as well. So just to position in the AI space, first of all, that there is this free version. So take pause. Yes, Copilot is actually the Microsoft 365 Copilot chat. Chat is free. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it's free, okay, but it mustn't do much. Well, actually, it does the same and more than ChatGPT Enterprise. So you could go and buy ChatGPT Enterprise, what is it, $30 US per user per month, and you could go through the laborious task of moving files back and forth between your OneDrive and your SharePoint up into the repositories that ChatGPT use to give you that enterprise data protection. Well, why don't you just turn on Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, which is free and included as part of your Microsoft 365 subscription. Sounds pretty good. Oh, and you can even create agents with that. Now, if you're creating agents that consume, there may be a consumption component to that. So there might be a metering, particularly if you expose it outside your business. You create agents, you create a web page and it's doing agentic work against your data sources. There might be a paid for component to that. All right, so what's this thing called Copilot then? It's a whole lot less words, but I'm paying for it. So I get something for free, which is called Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, a lot of words. Or I just drop the chat bit, but I got to pay for it. Well, that's because now it's inbuilt in the applications and it gives you the ability to use a more sophisticated tool, Copilot Studio, to create agents in the business and to be used external to the business as part of that subscription fee of $47.15. But I know we've got a lot of small businesses on the phone, and that's a big chunk of change to look at on a monthly basis. So good old Microsoft said, we'll give you a business version of that. By the way, it's exactly the same as the one in the middle, but you're only going to have to pay $32 a month because you're a small business. Same capabilities, 300 users maximum. So that's pretty good. So I wanted to re-emphasize that point about the free version. And I also want to make another level of clarity. Notice that there's a little black M365 black and white bar under that icon. Look for that one. Because if you see one which hasn't got it, you're actually using the one that's part of Windows, the Windows version Copilot. That's free too. Really good for holiday planning. Fantastic. But it's not grounded like the one with the little black banner underneath it, grounded on your data, which is the Microsoft 365 one for free. Then you've got that consumption model I mentioned earlier. So rather than going and buying Claude or Claude Business or ChatGPT Enterprise, you can actually get that already in the box. And then we've got the big brother, the Copilot version for $47 in the business version. Now, I'll just put this chart up here to show you very clearly, because people say, well, surely I get less if I'm using Copilot Business. No, you're not. Getting all the dots that are on the very right-hand side are in the middle column. And then I've also put a column in there for the Copilot Chat, which is showing, wow, I get pages, I get interpreter, I get image creation, I get agent management, I get enterprise data protection. What, that's free? Yes, well, not really free, Phil. I've bought Microsoft 365, a business SKU, and then I get it because I'm using Microsoft 365. But please, you don't have to go and spend more money on ChatGPT Enterprise or Claude Business to get enterprise data protection, which is what most people are going and buying those additional products for. Indeed, we've seen scenarios where people are doing this right here in Australia. They don't realise that they've got that Microsoft 365 Copilot, and I've put $30 US there. And then they've gone and bought the enterprise, they've gone and bought Glean, they've gone and bought Agent Space from Google with Notebook LM because they want to do some podcast creation from files. You do that, that's in Teams. You just drop it in a notebook in Teams. It'll take a PDF file and turn it into a PDF. It'll turn it into a podcast. It's there. You don't have to pay $45 to get that. And then they even do their presentations, you know, their Canva presentations with Gen AI. Well, PowerPoint's got Gen AIs in it as well. There's the Copilot within that. So, all right. So there's very clearly a strong ROI with respect to Copilot Microsoft 365. These are the sorts of numbers that we're seeing come through from Microsoft in terms of their early impact assessments. I mean, it's getting a bit dated. We're talking April 2025. I'm sure they'll have a new bunch of data coming out shortly. Now, with the measuring system, this is another element that you don't tend to get with those other third parties. The third parties will give you these great tools to go and generate content and agents, but where's the measurement? Measurement and reporting capabilities are such a critical point to see how successful the deployment of these AI technologies are in the business. So yes, we're talking about governance, security, and management controls, but how do we get the measurement on the adoption? Some people in the business might be really enjoying the usage of these technologies, and you don't know unless you've got measurement and reporting capabilities. And they're built in through things like Copilot Dashboard, Copilot Studio Analytics, which is giving you insights to those high-performing individuals. Now, let's just touch on those suites. So this was announced in December last year. These two specific add-ons to the Microsoft 365 Business Premium Suite. Defender Suite, which is now bringing automation. Look at that. Automated investigation, discovery, real-time risk assessment, automatic. See those words like automatic. In the basic business premium product, you're getting detect, but you're not getting automated services. Similarly, if you drop down to Purview, automatically protect sensitive data. Previously, you had to manually classify data. Now we can automatically, based on keywords, based on sensitivity labels of individuals, we can do that straight away. Data loss protection, moving from just saying, oh, data left the organization, you need to be aware of it, to saying, hang on, we won't even let that data leave the organization. That information is protected information. I will give notification to administrators within your business or the Exigo Tech team so that they can identify and inform individuals that they are creating a risk by sharing that information. And then this is another special, because I think it's pretty cool. Microsoft is taking all this very, very seriously, that they're giving this 50% off on the Purview suite, which is the key element. If I said, look, if you haven't got the money to buy both, just spend the money on the Purview suite element for $9 per user per month. It is amazing, particularly to safeguard that sensitive information in your journey to Copilot and to AI. Those automated elements, particularly the sensitivity labeling. As I think it was Benno was saying to me the other day, this is like E5 level security for a small business. Exactly right. This is the E5. You know, what those big banks, the big insurers, the federal government is using to protect their environments today. They're using Microsoft Tech. All those big organizations, the airlines, etc. They're using the Purview suite. Well, you've now got access to that at a way better price as a business premium user, as an add-on for $9 a user a month. So that's pretty cool. Now, I've got a little video here that seeks to demonstrate for you just how that works. So let me roll the video.
Microsoft 365 Copilot works with the data security controls you have in place for file access, labeling, classification, and data loss prevention. Mario Rogers works for Violet Martinez, and both are on the same team at Contoso. Mario and Violet are also members in the same group working on Project Falcon. Now we'll start with Violet, who's been working with the procurement and contract management teams to sell their partner ReliCloud 1,500 Mark 8 quadcopters. And you can see the file is labeled highly confidential with restricted access, and it describes all the terms in the purchase agreement. Because Violet has access to the file, she's able to search for and find it in SharePoint and Microsoft365.com. And of course, Violet can also navigate to the file's location in the Agreements folder of the project site to find the purchase agreement. So now let's look at Mario's experience. Even though he's on the same team and working on Project Falcon with Violet, if Mario tries to search for the Contoso purchase agreement, he won't find it. And there are a few purchasing documents that he does find without sensitive information, but not the one that Violet's working on. And if Mario knows the location of the purchase agreement and tries to navigate to it directly, it just appears as an empty folder to him. And when Mario launches Word on the web and creates a blank document, then prompts Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the Contoso purchase agreement as a reference file, because Microsoft 365 Copilot respects the file permissions of its user, Copilot also cannot access the purchase agreement. Now, if we switch back to Violet's screen, because she has permission to access the purchase agreement, she can use Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the file. And after a moment, you'll see it created a summary of the purchase agreement, and Violet decides to keep it. Then data security controls for Microsoft Purview discover sensitive information found in the Microsoft 365 Copilot generated content. The document is automatically labeled as highly confidential, and policies are enforced to restrict access to the document.
Love that little video. And John, I think you've been kind enough to share the Vimeo link to that with everybody. I think it's a really powerful little video that summarised quite crisply the reason for introducing Purview into the organisation, to give that security of documentation, which is important documentation in your business. It could be intellectual property. It could be customer lists. It could be terms and conditions on contracts. It's things that you just don't want to lose. But by putting those controls in place to safeguard the data, it can't leave the organisation, it's protected. Now, I've put together a few slides here. I'm conscious of time that map what you get in Business Premium, left-hand side, with your basic Business Premium subscription, and then what comes with the Defender suite. So this gives you that advanced information protection to automatically alert IT, identifies account compromises, and forces password resets. If we look in the email space, email, BEC, business email compromise, you can see with the Defender suite, we get that enhanced email defense. Not only is it detecting email in your box, but it's looking for the similar email in everybody else's email boxes and checks for similar emails and deals with those. So it's looking more holistically across your tenant to ensure that we've got the safeguards, the security in the business, preventing those phishing attacks. In the ransomware attack vector, we've got advanced threat protection, automatically isolating infected devices, hunting, looking across endpoints for similar infections, and then removing those threats automatically without waiting for IT. So this is very advanced technology. Cloud app security, so good to detect uploads, blocking immediately and alerting, rather than, oh, that information went out, oh, we know it happened. This is now going to block it and alert, and then dealing with that. Look, this is a little video I put together, an example of data loss prevention. It's just a simple USB drive, and I've got a family album, and I've also got a confidential document. So watch what happens when I try and move that family album across to the USB. Not a problem. But when I try and move a confidential document across, I get an alert saying you can't put that protected labeled document about Project Jupiter on a USB drive, which potentially is going to go externally. Let me go to the next one for sake of time. It would be in a mobile scenario. We're in a Teams conversation, and we're basically specifying that credit card information cannot be shared in a Teams conversation. So in my Teams conversation, somebody's asked me to provide my credit card details. I type the credit card details. No, you're not allowed to share credit card details in a Teams conversation. It could be other information as well. If we look towards security with DLP and blocking, sensitive data, we want to safeguard those endpoints. We want to block those uploads. And this is where insider risk detection flags can be applied. I'm looking at the clock here. So I'm just going to play a couple of the videos. These videos will be made available to you. The first one here is a very simple one with respect to credit card. And again, I type in a credit card number, which could be either with or without spaces and dashes. It's automatically been classified as confidential. The next one I'm going to play is where I have a document that's come to me in email. And that document has got confidential information in it. I can view the permissions in a PDF file. It doesn't have to be a Microsoft format. It's an Adobe file. I can see that content copying and things are not permitted. So when I start to put in project names, I start to paste in images. As soon as I put in confidential tagged information like AI 500, show the sensitive context, Protect Jupyter is it, and I need to apply sensitivity labels. And indeed, when I do apply that label and save that file away, it's now putting a watermark in the back of the document and the SharePoint site in which it's stored is being updated to show that it is highly confidential. And that's that automatic classification, automatic coming through with that new Defender suite. So please think about the enhancements that are coming to address those security challenges, the Defender suite and the Purview suite, which gives you those additional capabilities essentially necessary in this era of Gen AI to protect your organisation. So protect, detect, rapidly and continuously respond. That's why we've got our friends at Exigo Tech who's going to provide you with that assessment. Look, at the endpoint, yes, Microsoft is giving a very comprehensive suite in that Defender suite for Business Premium across the 5 dimensions that have been represented there. But if for some reason you're not necessarily using those or have a chance, you have a desire to use something that is non-Microsoft, there are connectors in this ecosystem to support you bringing what you may already have under subscription today from another vendor. That can all feed into a telemetry space, a SIEM, if you're interested in what a SIEM is. It's an event management technology called Sentinel. So it is gathering the information, not just Microsoft technologies, but gathering it from 350 other vendors, connectors, to give you that insight to the events and the incidents that are security related within your business. So that's respectful of Microsoft, respectful that the world is heterogeneous. It's not an all a Microsoft world. And then these are the additional capabilities summarized in terms of over and above what you get with Business Premium. So that's the Defender suite. And then, of course, Purview, which I really love, because Purview brings in these elements around security, compliance, and governance. And so the suite that's an add-on to Business Premium specifically focuses in on data loss prevention and data security posture management. I call that one out notably because this is an element that the team at Exigo Tech will use to detect the health of your environment, the data estate, and assess its security posture. So this technology that's inside Business Premium Purview suite looks across the OneDrives, your Exchange Online, your SharePoint sites. It examines the permissions that are set today, the sensitivity labeling, etc., and provides a report, obviously a report that you can analyze or with the expert help of Exigo Tech, give you better insights of what needs to be done to harden up the environment or potentially even go, wow, you've set a very high bar on this. We might be able to loosen that up a little bit. So that in one element of a very busy slide, that DSPM for AI is something I'd commend you to think about leveraging, again, with the help of the Exigo Tech team within your business. That's a little bit more of an expanded view on what that sits behind, as it says, proactive AI security assessment of your data estates. But you can see there's other elements there, e-discovery. I hope you don't ever get into a litigation situation. I really do. But if you do, the great thing is that you've got that e-discovery and auditing capabilities, which reduces the investigation time. You can basically use that e-discovery against your estate of Microsoft 365 resources and say, well, tell me all the events that were related to the building of the bridge over the Swan River, where we had Tony, Phil and Ahmed involved. And between these two dates, it goes out across that estate of information. Now, it can go up to 99 years, but Microsoft 365 hasn't been around 99 years yet. But for as long as it's been around, it can go back across that record, that history record, and bring back those elements that were to do with Phil and Tony and Ahmed to relating to the Swan River build. A whole lot easier than you having to go to backups and restore them and looking for individual files. So hopefully you don't get into a litigation situation, but incredible cost saving, time saving, when you're already under pressure that you've got litigation, that this Microsoft Tech can do it. There's stories to tell about every single one of those. And I think the point is it's comprehensive. Microsoft thinks of this as a business, as a big business of itself, what does it need to be effective as an organization, and makes those technologies available to you through these suites. This is an insider risk management video. I'm going to buzz through this one because I know this one takes a little bit of time, but it basically goes through an investigation process and brings to the point where they've identified somebody leaving and we need to go and alert for further investigation, the exit of that information. My closing point is about this quick start blueprint. This blueprint was put together by Amir from Microsoft. Yeah, right here in Australia, right here in Sydney. And Amir did a fabulous job, I think, in this quick start guide. Look, he broke it down into good, better, best in terms of the activities that you should undertake to get to a good state, to a better state. You know, have a look at those goods. Basically, sensitivity labeling. That's a really important thing to do. Confidential in all employees. One of the first things that happened in Microsoft when they introduced Copilot at the start was everything was automatically classified as confidential, which is kind of annoying when I left Microsoft and I wanted to be able to have a bunch of documents because I didn't have my access anymore. So I've got files now that I cannot access because I don't have permissions under my Enter ID. I'm not at Microsoft.com anymore. I can't access it. Setting some default labeling, so automatically classifying things as confidential. DLP policies, you know, goes to your point about the changes in the local notifiable data breach laws. Please work with the Exigo Tech team. Make sure you've got DLP activated and then the auditing. And then you can go through the better column and the best column. You can see the time frame. It doesn't take that long, 1 to 2 weeks to get to a good state with respect to mitigating data leakages, oversharing scenarios, insider risk management, protection of the data in your business. So yeah, a good start today is just good. Doing those simple steps that Amir's put up in the left and the left-hand side and the blocking the information in these key data sources.
It's a start.
Yep, that's a great start. All right. Look, I do know that Amir and Ben did a recording of 38 minutes. He's kindly provided a link to that recording. It's quite in-depth. It does a full demonstration of things like data security posture management, sensitivity labeling, establishing DLP services, insider risk management. So Amir does a very, very thorough job in that 38 minutes of giving a full demonstration of how those technologies work. But the last thing is this navigation of Microsoft 365. Look, I don't know if you're aware of M365 Maps. It's got to be one of the most hit sites. Every time Aaron does a post within about 10 minutes, he's got 17,000 likes. That's pretty good. He's a significant influencer out there. So Aaron Dinage is the chap who's based in Canberra with Microsoft, and he keeps this pretty fresh. And you can see that there in September, he's already getting ahead of the game by putting in that Defender and Purview link, which tells you
it already expired. There's a new
it's
one
already out. Yeah. Correct. And so here we then have, when you drill down on that, he's done it so nicely with these color buttons, tiles, very Windows 8.1, but with these tiles, you can click in each of those tiles and it gives you a full explanation of the capabilities that sit behind that. Look, it is integrated, it is comprehensive. You could go and get, and in fact, I don't think vendors exist for all those buttons that are there, but you could go and get other vendors to try and fill those gaps. But look, this all works together. It uses the Enter ID, it uses common management planes. It's under a consistent licensing program. So please do think about, you know, getting these Defender and particularly the Purview suite for Business Premium and add-on. And you can see here that you've got your M365 maps for the Essential 8 that was produced in September, and maybe there's a new version of that one
that's
too.
Current.
That's current.
That's the Essential 8 framework that they're completed.
All right. Well, with that, I am going to say, firstly, thank you for giving me 50 minutes of your time.
Thank you.
And I hope that that's given you some reasonable insight to the risks in and around generative AI, the role that Business Premium and the Defender and Purview suites offer you as an opportunity to upscale and increase your maturity level around security, and then how maps could play a role to help you figure out those tools. And of course, in a closing comment, it would be say, do engage the Exigo Tech team to think about how you can do that data security posture management for AI assessment and additional zero trust assessment in the business. But with that, I'm going to hand over to Brendan. Brendan, you're with us.
I am.
You're loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Okay, I'm just going to take over the control. All right. Thank you. I'm Brendan. I'm the Director of Information Security and delivery at Exigo Tech. And today I'm going to walk you through three things. Firstly, the Exigo Tech journey with relation to security. And then I'm going to go through some customer stories that have actually happened, which relate back to all of those things that Phil just went through. And then finally, as a bonus today, I'm going to go through the Gartner update. So I was lucky enough to attend the Gartner Security and Risk Summit at the ICC in Sydney over the last 2 days. And there's a lot of things I learned from that, which again tie into this whole conversation around really the convergence between security and AI coming together. So firstly, Exigo Tech. So we started as Exigo Tech back in 2015. There was four of us back then. We have now close to 150 people globally. So it's been a good adventure. I did start the Exigo Tech journey with hair, and it's since disappeared. But I think if I fast forward to 2020, that's really when we had our first key milestone around security. And that's when we got ISO 27001 certified. And we did that in both India and Australia. And that means that every year since then, we've been audited twice. And every year we have to prove to the auditors that we are improving our security posture. So 6 years on, we're about to go through our 12th audit. And last year in Australia, we actually had 0 non-conformities. And that means that the auditor didn't have anything negative to say about our environment, which was a massive achievement. In 2022, Telstra rolled out their security strategy across their partner network. And that meant that partners had to become aligned with the Essential 8 and eventually meet a maturity level 3, which is the highest tier. Exigo Tech was one of the first partners to meet Essential 8 maturity level 3, which was another good achievement. But we also get audited for that every year now. So that's 3 audits every year that we go through. And the final part, which is a much more recent achievement, over this time, we've been constantly upgrading our technical controls. As a tech company, that's something that we really focus on. And we've now surpassed a score of 82 with the Microsoft Secure score. And that really means that we are ahead of the majority of the people out there. We do get access to a lot of our customer tenants, so we can help them elevate their secure score. But 82 is actually a very high score, so something that we're also very proud of. But it's not over yet. We're still going. We have more to do, as always, with security. The first customer story that I wanted to talk to was related to compliance, which is very broad. As you saw from Phil before, there's a lot of different frameworks, and it's always a case of which one suits you or where should you start. And we actually had a customer who was only a small customer, 5 staff, working with the government directly. And therefore, as part of their contract with the government, they needed to prove to the government that they are getting at least to a level of maturity level 2 based on Essential 8. And they came to us in a bit of a panic. They were concerned about having to implement too many tools and too many different applications, as they only had 5 people within the business. But they were already on business premium, so they didn't actually have to do anything other than implement what was already there in the tenant. And we were able to do that within 4 weeks, so that when they had this contract reviewed, they were already meeting a maturity level 2 within E8. And we are now on a journey with them to get them to maturity level 3. And they're going to leverage the security add-on for business premium to get them there. The second story that I wanted to touch on was more around one of the offerings under the Exigo Protect slide just from before, and that is MDR. And the reason MDR is really a good starting point if you're not sure where to start, we have a number of larger customers which have a 2-year roadmap of a program of works where they're uplifting their security. It's tied into cloud migrations and a whole bunch of different things because they've got a whole bunch of on-prem servers they're still migrating. They might have some old applications that they need to modernize. And because of that, they can't implement the security as fast as they would like, but they still want to find a way to reduce the risk as quickly as possible. And MDR is a really good way of doing that. And if you're using Microsoft as your key ecosystem for most of your cloud services, then you get most of the telemetry with that as well. So other than the network side of it, the rest of it can come from Microsoft, and something that you can implement very quickly and get a huge reduction in risk. And it can also drive your strategy. We had a customer that had a few servers that were still on premise. Everything else had moved to the cloud, but they hadn't had time to get those final servers moved up yet. And as soon as we implemented MDI, we could see that those servers were getting absolutely hammered constantly. And they were locked down. They had the right ports closed off and all that sort of thing. But it was a risk that they were constantly under attack. And therefore, we actually put some of the other projects that were in flight on hold. And then we finished off the migration so that we could get those final 2 servers into the cloud, into Azure, making sure they're secure. And since then, we've seen the noise from the MDR solution go down drastically, so they're not getting so many alerts. Another story that I wanted to talk through is around zero trust and break glass accounts. So if you know what zero trust is, it's all about least privilege, always verify, and assume breach. They're the 3 pillars. And break glass accounts is something that actually goes against zero trust, but it's still a best practice and it's still required. And break glass accounts are literally accounts that allow you to get into your tenant as a backdoor in case someone has gotten into your tenant and tried to kick you out. And we had a customer ring us up in a panic. They had been kicked out of their tenant. They couldn't get in. In this case, they were very lucky because as a Microsoft partner, we had access to their tenant via GDAP, and we were still able to access the tenant, and we were able to stop it before it became a major issue. This company has about 30 employees, so it wasn't a micro business. It wasn't a huge business. It was right in between. And they were very grateful, obviously, that we could stop this from being a disaster. They now have break glass accounts in place, and we have access to that as well. And we also then went deeper into the conversation around what other gaps should we close for them. And the first one that we start with, which we talked about to any new customer, is, are you ready for an attack? So if you are ready and you have a plan, even when you do get breached, and it's when these days, it's not if, it's when that you're going to get attacked. If you have a good plan in place and you don't panic, you're more than likely going to be able to stop most of the damage from that attack. So it's really good to be reviewing, are you ready? Not just from a disaster recovery, do you have backups? Are they tested? Typically, they should be tested annually, but I would suggest that even quarterly is a much better sort of frequency these days with the volume of attacks that are happening. But it's also, do you have an incident response plan? Have you made decisions about what would you do in certain scenarios? If you make those decisions before it happens, the event itself is not going to be as stressful, but it's also not going to be as impactful. So they're through the recent customer stories that tie into all of those previous slides that Benno and Phil went through and kind of showcase the importance of making sure that you're getting the most value out of the Microsoft stack. We still see so many tenants that have licensing and features that aren't being used just because the customer is unaware or they still haven't had time to really focus on it. But that's where we can help. So we can help you prioritize a roadmap which is specific to you. And then from there, we can make sure that you're reducing the most amount of risk possible for whatever budget you can assign. The next part is around Gartner. So before I go into how we can help, I just wanted to go through some of the Gartner updates. Gartner was a cyber conference or cyber and risk conference, but the theme was all based around AI. Every single vendor I spoke to spoke about AI. It was on all the marketing collateral. It was talked about in every single keynote or talk that I went to. And I found that very interesting because that hasn't always been the case with cyber events. It's always been a sub-theme, but this was the overriding theme across the whole event, which ran for 2 days. Another thing around that, though, was there's still a big theme of consolidation in cybersecurity. So consolidation is trying to remove as many systems and tools that you don't need and have your attack surface reduced. Microsoft weren't actually at this Gartner event, but all the competitors were. And what I found was if you were to try and cover all the things that Microsoft can cover in their ecosystem, you'd probably have 20 or more vendors that you're dealing with independently. They can solve a lot of the problems, but you now have all these different tools and SaaS offerings, which is probably a nightmare to manage. So going with Microsoft consolidates everything under one ecosystem, makes it much easier to manage, and it's a very safe bet because Microsoft are doing very great things in this space. The other thing around that is zero trust is a big talking point, and it's been amplified now. The whole era of agentic AI is about to explode. And if you have a good zero trust posture within your environment, you can treat an agent the same way you treat any other identity within the environment, and therefore you can make sure it's safe and it's not going to cause many of the vulnerabilities that can be exposed. Only a few weeks ago, you may have heard about the AWS outages that was done by an agent. It wasn't the agent going rogue. It was simply that they had given the agent too many permissions and it had access to things that it shouldn't have. And therefore, it actually took out a whole data center for, I think, something like 13 hours. So that was discussed. Zero trust, really important now. And one of the really exciting things about zero trust is that we are now coming to this convergence where cybersecurity isn't just a cost that you can't prove return on investment and you can only talk about risk reduction. It's turning into something that you can directly correlate to a return on investment by making sure that you're securing your agentic AI strategy. So that's something that's really exciting for me. It's much easier to get budget approval then, and then you can roll that out and get the benefit across the whole ecosystem. And there was also talk of the Privacy Act reform that Benno talked to a bit earlier. It was more of a sub-theme, but it's definitely something on the radar. We'd already have customers that are reaching out to us, asking for updated T's and C's. And luckily for us, we are ISO certified and E8 M3. We're already compliant across all of their requests, but it's an opportunity for us to then go out and speak to any of those other customers that haven't yet, thought about how they can realign with the new Privacy Act reform. So yeah, that's the Gartner update and that's the Exigo Tech story. With that, I will pass it back over to Benno to go through the final offering, and please click on that QR code.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Just checking my audio is working okay. I'll just bring everyone on the stage so they can have a quick goodbye and a quick wave. So thank you very much. We'll also put in the session here so you can all see us. But please, if you found this session useful, this is the final piece here, which is for you to complete your registration for the Microsoft Cloud Accelerator. That will enable us to do more. If you do that, you will get into the Zero Trust Security Assessment. We'll offer that to you absolutely free just for you listening to us for 90 minutes. And this is a very exciting conversation, especially with the AI transformations that are happening everywhere. So I really want to thank everyone for joining. Phil, John, Brendan, thank you very much. I think that's pretty much it. We're happy to stay around for a couple of minutes if there are any questions. Other than that, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity, Benno. Exigo Tech team, it's been good. It was a pleasure to talk about this stuff, because if we can make the world a safer place, it's a better place.
It is doable.
Thank you. Thank you, Benno. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, John.